gift through His word. It's God's gift through His word. It's God's gift through His word. It's God's gift through His word.
Hello and welcome to God's Gift Through His Word. I'm your host, Karina Drake, of this special episode of Domestic Violence Bombshell After Effect with my mother, T. Drake, host of the podcast. Today we'll be talking about 7 different types of domestic abuse, starting off with emotional, financial, verbal, physical, spiritual, digital, and mental abuse. And then we'll follow over to interviewing with my mother and then talking about the psychological effects after it. Now, before we jump into it, I'll state this statistics. In general, domestic abuse statistics, 1 in 4 women, 24.3%, and 1 in 7 men, 13.8%, aged 18 and older in the U.S. have been victims of severe physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime, as well as Arizona being ranked as the 4th in the national in domestic violence, according to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, which is 42.6% in women and 33.4% in men, which is concerning due to Arizona being an open carry state along with other reasons. Now we'll jump into the emotional abuse, which is basically non-physical behaviors that are meant to control, isolate, or frighten you. In romantic relationships, it presents as threats, insults, constant monitoring, excessive jealousy, manipulation, humiliation, intimidation, gaslighting, love bombing, silent treatment, and dismissiveness. Sometimes it's more obvious, like a partner yelling at you, calling you names, or even degrading yourself. Even though it doesn't physically hurt you, it can traumatize, hurt, and makes the partner distrustful to others. Financial abuse is a common tactic used by partners to gain power and control in a relationship. It may be subtle, but in general, it is supposed to conceal information, limit the victim's access to assets, or reduce accessibility to the family's finances. Examples that happened to my mother is my father demanding dowry payments, not making child support payments, and putting loans in her name where she didn't even know. Verbal abuse is a type of emotional abuse where the partner uses the words to ridicule, manipulate, degrade, assault, and dominate, where it adversely impacts the person/partner. Physical abuse is any intentional act that causes injuries or trauma through bodily contact in order to force results by harming them. It can range in behaviors from hitting, slapping, punching to more severe forms of violence. Spiritual abuse is not really talked about because it's mostly held in churches by church elders or faith leaders, creating toxic environments or abuse on their congregation. But it can also happen on intimate partners. They can limit you from being active in your faith, making it difficult for a partner to identify their own spiritual life. Digital abuse is when someone monitors, stalks, harasses, threatens, controls, or impersonates another person using techniques like posting videos or pictures. Mental abuse is basically psychological abuse, where it uses tactics to manipulate, frighten a person, disorient their thoughts and actions, and change their sense of self in order to maintain control, mostly used to manipulate, hurt, weaken, and influence a person's thoughts and actions within their daily lives, and even changing their sense of self to the point they harm their own well-being. Now that we're done discussing the 7 types of abuse, now we'll forward over to my mother's interview. Do I just say hi?
So for me, when I was going through domestic violence with my ex-husband, it was really challenging for me. I was feeling guilty and had a lot of shame because I had been going through domestic violence for 7 years by myself and hadn't told a soul. So one of the ways I was coping was to isolate, was to hide, was not to tell anyone about the abuse that I had been suffering.
How can someone rebuild trust in others after being abused?
So trust is a really challenging thing because you have to really put yourself out there and be vulnerable. And just remember that the person that hurt you is not everybody else. So that takes time to be transparent and open. And when you do that, you get the chance to figure out what people you can really trust and take your time to rebuild that in others.
What does healing look like and how long does it usually take?
So for me, healing is still currently going on. It's been 5 years since I've been actually divorced, and the healing process is a long period of time. And for me, I would never tell anybody how fast it takes, just like if you're grieving, nobody knows how long that takes. You just go through the process of doing that work every day to get stronger and healthier, and you grow. So for me, it's still a process. I'm still getting rid of little remnants of the domestic violence, but it's never going to be totally 100% gone. It will still be there. But I continue to take my power back every single day by learning myself, doing things that I enjoy, loving on my family and my children, and just taking my time to enjoy life. And that's part of my healing journey.
How do friendships and family relationships change after someone leaves an abusive environment?
So it really does depend. Sometimes, like for me, when I first came out of that relationship, I was very, very angry and I was very unhappy and I would snap on people within the drop of a dime. So rebuilding that and having friendships, sometimes you pull yourself away from friends, sometimes you don't want to be around family. And depending on the family you have, that could even add extra challenges to you already coming out of an abusive situation. So it can change, but friends that love you and they know what's going on, they're going to rock with you, they're going to be with you, they're going to stand by you. So it still takes some time not to try to dismiss them or isolate yourself or kind of block yourself from them. And you kind of have to put yourself out there.
How can a survivor set boundaries with people who don't understand their experience?
So this is always a good one when it comes to boundaries. Sometimes people do not understand how you stayed in a situation for so long. But when you have those three things that you think about, the fight, flight, and freeze, your mind at the time and your body is trying to keep you safe. So those boundaries that you have and them not understanding, that's a little bit hard to always try and explain to those that have never had that experience. But when you set up boundaries, you're setting it up not just for you to help people understand how to treat you, you're also setting up boundaries for yourself, not just to keep you safe. But if there's something that you prefer not to talk about, there might be a boundary where you do not talk about that situation until you feel comfortable. And that's a personal boundary that you hold. And that also helps you to teach people how to treat you and how to navigate your situation.
What role does therapy or support groups play in the recovery process?
So for me, I had a lot of that. I went to a lot of support groups, some mindfulness groups. I went to different kinds of domestic violence support groups as well. And I did a lot of personal growth with individual therapy. And it does help a lot, especially the talk therapy, because sometimes you have to get it up and out of you. You have to discuss it, you have to talk about it. And of course, those therapies, you get to hear other people that share a similar kind of situation to you, and you get to hear how they're dealing with it and what they're going through. And I remember I took two of the same kind of support group about anger management and domestic violence, and they were like 6 months apiece. So I took it twice, and I also took an individual therapy. I knew that I needed it, and I knew I needed to be a better parent to my children. And if I didn't have it, I would just stay the way I was. So that was also helpful for me to become a better parent as I was dealing with some of the things that I had dealt with and coming through with domestic violence.
What legal steps might a survivor face after leaving an abusive relationship?
So legal is always challenging. Sometimes even after you stepped out of being with that person and you've removed yourself, you still have legal challenges if it's not just putting on a restraining order that you might have to remove or any other legalities. There's other things that you might have to utilize the services of a process server to get them served so you could get a divorce. And for me, I had to do that multiple times and it took a very long time to do that. So I was going to the courts often to try to get a divorce to happen, and it took so long to do. So legally, I was dealing with the courts often and a lot. And on top of that, there might be some financial things that go through legality as well. And I had to use a lot of different people to assist me to navigate the court system because it's not an easy system to go through. There's a lot of steps, a lot of hoops, a lot of things that you have to do, and you have to do it correctly, or else the divorce that you're trying to get or the restraining order you're trying to put on someone is not going to happen. So all those steps and all those different things can be extremely challenging. And then you also have to deal with the after effects of taking care to even sometimes set up legal with a confidential address where they can do that with the Secretary of the State. They have programs where if you are a victim of domestic violence, they can protect your address where your information goes to them instead of your physical address so that the person cannot track you down. So there's a lot of different things you have to do. And you might have to also set up not as far as legal, but also to protect your credit. You might have to put a credit freeze on all of the credit bureaus so that things can't be taken out in your name and credit cards and things of that nature can't be opened in your name.
How do survivors manage financial independence after economic abuse?
Oh, this is a hard one, and this is one I'm still yet dealing with because the financial independence after economic abuse is something that's huge. It took me a long time to kind of muddle through and get through the muck and mire of some things to the point of me saving up enough to actually rebuild some of my credit to be able to recently afford to be able to purchase my own home. It took forever from living in a transitional facility and then in an apartment and then in a condo and then back again to apartment and then out of an apartment and another apartment till now I have a permanent home. So that was challenging in itself. And there's a lot of finances that you have to ask, and sometimes you have to elicit help from other organizations. I remember when I was first getting myself and my children an apartment, I had to go and hunt down nonprofits. And one nonprofit would pay for your rent, the other nonprofit would pay for the security deposit, your last month's rent, or however they wanted it, and they would pay for that. But I would have to look for those resources in order for me to establish myself. So financially, it was challenging. Financially, it was hard, and I was doing a lot, and it was still challenging from just having to move and have no place to go and not have my finances. Thank goodness I'm a veteran and I had that even when the transitional facility, they even asked for $200 a month because that's all they could charge. But still that was coming out and still had to pay for little groceries and things for my family. And still my family wanted some money, even though I'm paying transitional facility and my car note and every other little bill that I had with me. So it can be a struggle. It could be a challenge, but it can be done when you have discipline and you really have a goal in your mind of where you're trying to go to.
Now, the last question is, what are some challenges when co-parenting with an abusive ex?
Well, the challenge is that I can't co-parent and I would want to. Unfortunately, for me in my particular situation, that doesn't mean it's for everyone. There are some people that they are able to co-parent with the ex, but for my situation, I am unable to do that because anytime I would want to establish that, there would be statements that say I have a warning on my life, which means that person still has in their mind he would want to end my life. And I just can't be around someone who wants to continuously figure out ways to do that and say things all the time Because for me, those aren't jokes. Those aren't, oh, he's just saying things. Because the last time he said something like that was, I'll go to jail for assault. He was serious then. And anything that he says in jest is not funny. Like one statement he made is, I wish I could find you guys on the road and swing my 53-foot trailer into you all. And that's me and his children. So it's not funny, and it's not something that I would want to try to co-parent someone that has those kind of intentions, because if you can do that to me and your children in the vehicle and you're saying it's just a joke, that's not funny. So the challenge is that I really am unable to co-parent because of the danger. I still want to make sure that I protect my children, and I want to make sure I protect myself. So I don't want to put myself in harm's way purposely, knowing the kind of person that he is and knowing his mindset. He hasn't forgotten some of these things. And I don't want to put myself in jeopardy, and I don't want to put my kids in jeopardy either.
Thank you, Mom, for taking your time to this interview and sharing part of your story. Now, the psychological effects after or blame themselves after enduring those times of abuse, especially when enduring a new relationship. After facing these difficulties, it is harder for them to connect with potential romantic partners, be reluctant to trust them, or not knowing the differences between what is or what isn't healthy or unhealthy relationships. There are some people who believe they can't leave, while some do stay for security, children, threats of being physically harmed if they do. There are other reasons, but these are the few examples why. But overall, they share the same fear, where leaving is greater than the fear of staying, which my mother is the one who took the risk for the betterment of herself and children, which I truly am grateful for, as not many have realized they have the courage to leave. Now, thank you for tuning in on this special episode of Domestic Violence Bombshell After Effects, which now my mother would say, stay blessed, motivated, and always inspired to do what the Lord lays on your heart.
God's gift.